Welcome back to Cool Clubs Reviews. Mark, everyone's going to want to know about the new P790 2023 version.
Right.
What have we got?
Well, I mean, this has been, one of our top sellers for the last 3 or 4 or 5 years probably, right? It's on its 3rd generation. It's right in the wheelhouse, better player club for us, long, looks good. It's got everything going for it. So it's been one of our top sellers, and I think it will continue to be.
And we've said this about a few irons. When you're redesigning,
Right.
don't mess it up.
Yep, that's a big one. And Titleist did a good job with that with a recent release. Callaway's got a little bit different thing coming out, but I think they did a good job with this. I don't think they messed it up. It looks very similar, very clean.
You can tell a lot just by the look of it. I mean, there are some subtle differences on the exterior.
Right.
The little slot in the back, slightly different finish, some of the placement.
Right.
But the overall, as you would want, is very, very close. The shapes looks very, very similar. And a lot of this stuff we can't show it on the review because it's all internal.
Right.
They've messed around with the CG. Each club has its own individual kind of CG. It's like this honeycomb mapping frame inside. It's really intricate.
Right. Essentially what they're doing with that is, they've got some tungsten to move around in here and different weights they can configure. And they're basically trying to get the CG as low as possible in long irons, so you hit your 4 irons a little higher. And then they slowly move it up throughout the set so that you don't hit ballooning 9 irons and stuff like that, and it gets a little lower. So, gone are the days of one club basically being the same design for all. Everybody now, and obviously TaylorMade being one of the top leaders and this being one of the top clubs, each individual iron is designed differently to a specific thing.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty important.
So I think we've got a few things to do here. Let's take a look at the numbers, and then we'll go backwards a little bit, and we'll compare it to the old model. Talk a little bit about who it's for, and then I think one of the key things, which I want you to comment on, is going to be, would you make a change? If you're an old 790 player and you're going to go, are you going to jump to the new one? So but we'll hold that till the end.
Good one. That's a good question. I'm not sure I know the answer yet.
Okay.
We'll by the end of this thing here.
So let's take a look at the numbers initially. Graphing, we've done both tests on this. Obviously, we're going to have a lot of players that are using this, better players and intermediate and, game improvement players probably too.
Right.
It scored pretty good all over, even for tour and overall performance. 164 carry on average, 3.7 stopping power, which will be interesting. We'll touch on that in a second. And then 233 spin launch. As it normally does with these kind of foam field ones, the long one's longer. A fair amount longer than some of the other mishits on it because they're springy. They're jumpy.
They're a little springy. The good news is on the tour test, and the release is very linear, right? So it's going in the right direction.
Yep. And heel, toe, and centre aren't a million miles away from each other. There's not big drop-offs on those clubs.
Right.
So now let's just cross back to the old model as well. So the old model was 160 carry. So we picked up 4 yards with this thing.
4 yards is substantial. Without changing the look of it much, or changing the performance any detrimental ways anyway, that's pretty impressive. So what they've done to do that is they actually raised the launch over a degree. So when we started talking about how they're moving the weights around and lowering the CGs and stuff, they've raised the launch, over a degree, which is substantial.
Yeah.
And they dropped the spin a couple hundred RPMs, like almost 300-400. So the net of that is it's the same stopping power.
So you're going to see 3.7 on this 790 and on the old one.
3.7 on the old one. But because they've got the lower CG and the higher launch, and they picked up 4 yards. That's a lot. And remember too, this is 80 miles an hour. Right? Now this is my speed. So 5 yards to me is like a half a club almost. That's a fair amount. At 90 miles an hour, you're going to see even more than that. You probably see 7 yards difference.
Yeah, energy transfer stays the same on a good hit, and it's just got more going into it.
Yeah.
So like you said, a little bit higher launch, a little bit lower spin, but the net is the ball hits the ground at a similar angle and holds up the same.
Yep, exactly.
The spin launch is what people are going to see as different, and this is where we kind of protect ourselves a little bit with our technology.
Right.
I think it was around 260 was the old one, and 233. So that indicates that's the RPMs coming down a little bit, but the trade-off is nothing.
Yep, trade-off is basically the same stopping power.
Okay.
Right.
So, I mean, handicap range, we talk about it every time. It's not the be all and end all, but we kind of want to put something.
This is a big range for this one, though, too, right? So I know some scratch players playing this, especially you guys that need distance. But I think I'm pretty comfortable up to a 12-15 handicap, especially if they're tending to get better.
Yep.
All round number as like a single number, I'd probably say this is nearly 8 handicap. Where are you sitting on that?
I've fit so many people into it. I've fit that full spectrum. I might have even pushed over 15 handicap a couple of times.
You can probably get to 18, especially if the guy's getting better, younger player, something like that.
But I think, I look at my dad as a good example. Dad plays, he fluctuates throughout the year. In the winter, he's down to probably a 13 handicap, and then he gets himself in the summer down to 9. And I think this is kind of a great range for him in that. It's going to give him a bit of distance. It looks great, and I think this is that player that, oh, you know, I want a blade, I want to look at a blade, but you need a little bit of love,
Right.
and this really does give
And
it.
some distance too.
Right.
Right.
Now the really hard question: would you make the change?
You know, I might actually, and a lot of times I say no because you know usually the differences are so small. It's not much. I mean, Tyler did a great job with their new irons that they came out with, and they're fantastic. You know, they feel better and everything else. You know, the only real reason to change though is the distances weren't that different. It was maybe a little more forgiving and maybe cosmetics.
Yeah.
This is you know 5 yards. I mean, that's a fair amount.
Yeah.
I might consider changing for that one.
And I think I'll be on the same team
Yeah.
as you. The minute changes that are there are nice. They're like more,
And they actually
more
do
subtle.
something.
Yeah, more and the
Right.
performance gain for me is, you know, obviously you and I are at that end where maybe we want to spin the ball a little bit, and distance doesn't mean everything.
Right.
But like you say, if you pick up 4 yards, that makes the game a little easier when you're getting into
Yeah.
that 150 range. So
Yeah, they've done a really good job of this. You usually don't see that big a change without some dramatic changes to how it looks and how it plays. They seem to have managed to pull that off.
good job, Taylor, mate.
Yeah, good job on this one. Yeah.
Thanks.